Hey everybody, it's Party Elite with another episode of Total Breakdown. Today, Samurai Warrior takes on Lopo602 as the Vampire Counts and Vampire Coast respectively, fighting a death-defying battle at Toothgrass Hill. The battlefield itself is a relatively simple one, but there are some advantages on either side should the commanders choose to use them. On this side over here on the left, you can see we have this mound that can be used to hide troops behind, but it can also be used as a vantage point for ranged units to stand atop of. On the far side, on the right as well, you can see we do have a mound as well that can be used for a good firing angle, but we also have a bunch of trees that can be used for some cheeky play, hiding troops among those trees to come in for some surprise flanking opportunities, and if there's some vanguard deployment on the field as well, might see some cheeky bit of play from that as well. But in the middle, it's fairly flat and simple, pretty plain, pun entirely intended, and that's where most of the fighting is likely going to take place. But yes, on either side we do have some elevation changes, and we do of course have those trees on the far side as well. But with that said and done, let's go ahead and take a look at composition and deployment. We have the Vampire Counts being led by Manfred von Karstein atop his steed, and his front line here consists of a lineup of zombies, and right behind them a lineup of Graveguard. Among them we do have the Stearnsmen. They're the Graveguard Regiment of Renown with that regenerative capability, of course. And back over here you can see we do have the Corpse Cart with the Unholy Lodestone, able to provide some support to troops around it. Behind that we have the Black Coach as well, magical damage output, armor piercing, and anti-infantry, so a very solid pick over there. We have some Fell Bats to the side over here, able to push in, maybe shut down range support that the Vampire Coast may have brought in, and as you can see on the far corner over there, Vanguard deployed Direwolves as well, hoping to do the same, I think, crush some range support as quickly as possible. And then off to the side over here as well, we've got Varix Reavers as well as these Blood Knights over here, I think trying to tuck behind the hill over here and maybe push in for a nice wide flanking opportunity should the opportunity present itself. But on the other side of the field, as you can see, engagements are looking to already begin, but the Vampire Coast are being led by a Vampire Fleet Admiral with the Lore of Deep available to her with a couple of those spells available. The front line here consists of the Zombie Pirate Deckhand mobs with the Tide of Skjold, that Regiment of Renown, available to them as well. We have the Zombie Pirate Deckhand mob with polearms over here tucked away in the trees, alongside a pair of them back over here guarding the carronades so that these artillery units can fire away relatively safely. We actually have the Zombie Pirate Gunnery mobs over here and over here, alongside the Bomber variant up over here as well, and we also have the Rotting Promethean Gunnery mob back over here, so a fair bit of range capabilities tucked away in the middle over here. And then we've got the Animated Hulks over here and over here. They are armor piercing, a fair bit of damage output among them if they're able to close the gaps to their targets. And then we have a pair of Sirens as well, a lot of physical resistance among them, decent units, but as we've seen already, the opposing side does have some responses to those physical resistant units already. But tucked away in the trees back over here, we also have some Scurvy Dogs already closing the gaps towards these Direwolves, and very well tucked away some more Scurvy Dogs, actually so well tucked away that I have to zoom really close to actually spot them. These Scurvy Dogs as well, looking to sort of push down and shut down that Vanguard deployment aggression from the Vampire Counts. But with all that said and done, let's go ahead and see how this all breaks down. As you can see, the action has already begun. These Direwolves and the Scurvy Dogs are going toe-to-toe with each other. A very important engagement over there. We'll touch on that in a bit, as over here, the carronades are already firing away into the front lines as well. Initially targeting, I think, these zombies, but that might have been fire at will. I think it almost certainly was, as the following shots are coming down towards the Corpse Cart here instead. And is that the best call is an important thing to consider. I mean, the Corpse Cart does have some very helpful abilities for the Vampire Counts over here. They are able to, of course, get that Unholy Lodestone to replenish hit points, and there's the Vigor Mortis as well that helps with melee defense and melee attack buffs, but both of those are only within a 40-meter radius or range around the Unholy Lodestone. And then on top of that, the Corpse Cart is also able to regenerate, so is it really the best target there? A lot of these carronade shots are missing. They're going completely wild, maybe a couple of lucky hits here and there, but there's also the Graveguard that are a very threatening unit against the Vampire Coast front line that they've brought, and of course the Black Coach as well is a bit of a scary unit. So an interesting situation. Of course, the carronade opting to fire on the Corpse Cart, getting again a couple of lucky shots in there. Meanwhile, at the same time, you can see these Fell Bats are moving forward to try and support some of these Direwolves over there, because that is a very important engagement. Whichever army comes out on top over there is going to be able to hound the other one with surprising rear charges, with some good flanking maneuvers. So you can see these animated hulks being pushed in as well. These fellbats have taken a lot of damage, though, as these gunnery mobs were able to turn around and fire away. So these guys are already down to about 25% health each at most. But as they're trying to push in and attack the scurvy dogs again, these animated hulks are coming in as well to maybe finish the job off there. So an interesting call, an interesting opening engagement, but that skirmishing looks like it's going to be shut down right away. Meanwhile, on this side over here, you can see Manfred pushing in alongside his cavalry units over here for that wide flanking opportunity. And take a look at this, not paying attention on this flank because of all the action that's happening on the other one, and these sirens are being quite wisely targeted by Manfred von Karstein by a wind of death, and it's going to come barreling through, and it's going to cause a lot of damage over here. As the sirens, again, they're physically resistant, but that magical damage drops down their health by about 25%. But that is not all, folks. That Wind of Death continues onwards into this unit of zombie pirate deckhand mobs, and that's going to cause a ton of damage to them as well, dropping their health by about 50% or so. So a great use of that Wind of Death, very nicely angled, very nicely positioned, and Manfred almost instantaneously after popping that shot off decides to pull back into safety, but he's not done yet. He decides to drop the Spirit Leech on these sirens as well, just to get that magical damage onto this physically resistant unit. So not a bad call at all. That Spirit Leech might have had a better use elsewhere, but nonetheless getting a touch of damage done as those cavalry units still continue to position themselves for a good flanking opportunity. Back over here, meanwhile, you can see Invocation of the Heck comes down. So even though that corpse card got brought down to about 50% health, between its own regenerative capabilities and the Invocation of the Heck, it is going to be topped up more or less. While off in the corner over there, you can see these animated hulks and the scurvy dogs have made very quick work of those direwolves. Those direwolves and the fellbats have all died off, so that is not a good situation for the vampire counts at all. Meanwhile, over here, you can see the black coach is sort of creeping forward, getting ready to engage these zombie pirate deckhand mobs as these sirens come, floating through into these zombies over here. That black coach is going to turn around and get a nice side and or rear charge into the sirens over here, doing a fair bit of damage over there. Again, not a bad call. It is a magical damage output type unit, so those sirens are in a bit of trouble, but of course we do have the pole arms coming through as well, and they will cause some trouble, armor piercing and anti-large, so the black coach does need to be careful over there. Meanwhile, over here, we had some zombies brought up from the dead to try and provide some support as the front lines are finally engaging. We do have these bombers tossing their bombs and hoping to cause a touch of damage here and there among the Grave Guard, because the Grave Guard will slice and dice right through all of these Vampire Coast zombies, so they have to be they have to be shut down very quickly. Over here, meanwhile, you can see we do have a beautiful summon. I very much like the look of this spell. The Rotting Prometheans get brought in from the deep, and they charge right into the Sternsmen over here. Again, the Sternsmen are able to regenerate as well, so they are a pretty annoying unit to deal with because they have decent melee stats as well. Their melee attack and defense stats are great. They're anti-infantry, so getting the Rotting Prometheans in there with their armor-piercing capabilities, just summoning them in to slow down the roll of the Sternsmen, but also, hopefully cause a little bit of damage early on, get them towards their regen cap. But over here, you can see Varix Reavers coming in with a nice charge into the animated hulks, causing a fair bit of damage to health and to morale, and the Blood Knights back there just tucking through the trees, looking for an opportunity to dive in somewhere as well, as gunshots are coming through to provide some support against these zombies. You can see the bombers firing away at these zombies over here. Meanwhile, over here, a rather beautiful call, pulling back these Graveguard immediately on seeing that spell being cast. So the Graveguard are going to be safe, but Van Geist's Revenge comes through, and this is another one of those beautiful spells. It is lined up very nicely. We've got Graveguard and we've got zombies. Unfortunately, we also have the zombie pirate deckhand mob that are in that firing line, but as this absolutely gorgeous and terrifying barrage comes through, it's going to cause so much damage to these units, absolutely destroying them. You can see the blood splatters over here. Sorry, this is absolutely gorgeous. I live for this kind of thing. Look at that damage done. These units have been completely obliterated. That's two whole units basically wiped out, and as you can see, after those shots come through, it's instant disintegration for friendly units and enemy units, and there we go, those guys are down as well. So very interesting call there, sacrificing one of their zombie pirate deckhand mobs. But over here as well, you can see these zombies have been eliminated by those bombers. So finally we get the Blood Knights charging in with a nice rear charge. They're trying to shut down some of these bombers because they've been causing a lot of trouble. They already have 32 kills among them. They have that fiery damage in their ammunition, so it would have been a good idea to use their bombs against the Sternsmen perhaps, because again, the Sternsmen are regenerative, or they have regeneration, which means they are weak to fire. The Blood Knights, meanwhile, you can see pulling away from those bombers and maybe trying to get a rear charge into the Tide of Skjold over here, getting them to crumble, while these Sirens are having a bit of a field day. They've taken a lot of damage in the opening acts of this battle, but now having a decent time. They're just barely hanging in there, while here you can see this Black Coach had to pull back into safety. It caused a fair bit of hurt to these Sirens, but once those zombie pirate deckhand mobs came through with their polearms, the Black Coach had to pull back. And meanwhile, over here you can see another summoning just to get some more support into this clump, bringing those rotting Prometheans in, again, trying to bog down. I think the Sternsman is back over here. The Black Coach, I think, trying to get closer and closer to Manfred to maybe get some magical support, as this corpse cart with its unholy lodestone is providing a little bit of support. You can see the Blood Knights over here have taken a fair bit of damage, so Invocation of the Heck comes through on them as they pull back into safety. They are crumbling, so good timing there. They need to be pulled back so that their leadership can, replenish a little bit so they can stop crumbling, and that Invocation of the Heck will hopefully keep them alive. Back over here, meanwhile, you can see Varric's Reavers pushing through to try and maybe shut down the artillery support back there, while Manfred and his summoned zombies and all kind of staying there, trying to keep this clump engaged over here as that Black Coach comes in with a nice rear charge, crumbling those animated hulks and getting some decent damage done to the Sirens. Meanwhile, over here, you can see a good rear charge coming through from these animated hulks. This has been going on for a while. These Grave Guards and zombies have been fighting for a while, but that rear charge might just make very quick work, especially of the Grave Guard. A good call over there, while back over here, you can see we do have this unholy lodestone equipped corpse cart being hit by some of these bombers. Again, that regenerative capability of the unholy lodestone means that it is going to, or rather of the corpse cart, I should say, means it's going to be a bit more susceptible to fiery damage. But over here, you can see the Sirens on the topic of susceptibility. They are susceptible to magical damage, and that's exactly what the Black Coach has brought to this side of the battlefield. Those Sirens are melting away. All back over here, you can see Varric's Reavers did manage to shut down the carronade back there for a little while, but ultimately pulling back towards this engagement, I think getting hit by some of these bombers. These bombers are getting a little distracted by these targets. They need to focus down on the Sternsmen. They're very nicely clumped up, a very solid target, and there you go. Finally, some of those shots coming through, and the Sternsmen are finally going to take a fair bit of damage over here, as again, that fiery damage does extra hurt because of that weakness to flame, again, because of the regenerative capabilities of the Sternsmen. Sort of sounding like a broken record, I know, but that is crucial over here. And you can see the Sternsmen drop their health by about 10 or 20% there. Another volley comes through, good bit of damage being done. The Sirens over here, meanwhile, holding down the fort against the Black Coach and Manfred von Karstein. That Black Coach needs to pull back and maybe get some cycle charges coming through, because again, it's very mobile. It has a great charge bonus as well. It should take advantage of that, but we do get some zombies summoned over here by Manfred to try and, again, bog these guys down, because at the same time, Lamprey's Revenge should actually pull back and fire into the engagement rather than just stay involved like that in melee. Over here, meanwhile, you can see Varric's Reavers getting shot at by some of these zombie pirate gunnery mobs, so closing the gap to try and shut them down. The gunnery mob needing to pull back and fire away from safety as these polearms give chase as well. Varric's Reavers not having a very good time. They got a little adventurous there. They did a little bit of damage to the carronade over here, but not having a good time at all right now, while these Grave Guards back over here are able to push through into the carronade, and we do have the Blood Knights able to push in as well, try and shut down that artillery support that has really lasted far too long, as these bombers now, again, they get shut down by the Sternsmen, and they're throwing their bombs and it looks like the regular Grave Guard. Not a good call at all. They need to pull back, while here you can see the corpse cart is in a bit of trouble going toe-to-toe with these polearms, and in come the animated hulks as well as these polearms over here, so that's not a good time for these Grave Guard or for the corpse cart over here. And you can see the balance of power is shifting strongly towards the Vampire Coast as they're slowly eliminating Vampire Count troops. You can see that, right flank has been handily won by the Vampire Coast. Varric's Reavers as well, kind of on the back foot over here, forced back. The Blood Knights are having a terrible time. In comes a charge, though, from the Black Coach over here. Invocation of the Heck trying to keep it alive as well. Not a bad call, of course. And you can see the Sirens on the left side have been taken care of, but the Sirens in the middle are still very much alive, and they need to dive in and get engaged against the Sternsmen over here, pushing in alongside the zombie pirate deckhand mob with polearms, as here, the Lamprey's Revenge still stuck in melee, just not an ideal situation for them to be in at all, while here these bombers are now being shut down. They have to pull back into safety as some of these gunnery mobs are firing away as well, so good call over there, kind of taking this far-off position to fire from atop this little mound over here, getting a fair bit of damage done to the Grave Guard, and they are crumbling right now. But off to the side over here as well, you can see we have these zombies crumbling. Manfred himself and the Black Coach are doing okay, but the Lamprey's Revenge, they're crumbling away as well, while over here, Varric's Reavers decide to take a bit of a risky charge into, I believe, these animated hulks, and then pulling back into safety more or less immediately. And you can see the Blood Knights have actually been taken care of, and these Sirens as well, as I say that, completely die off over there as well. But these gunners are doing a fair bit of work, firing away at the Grave Guard, doing a little bit of damage over here, just to try and get them to crumble. They are at critical binding, and look at this sacrificial move over here. I think the carronade was sent in to intercept and slow down the Grave Guard, so that the gunnery mob back here can keep firing away, as back over here, the Vampire Fleet Admiral is going to eat some charges. A great charge coming in from Manfred there, going to cause about 10 or so percent damage to hit points, so not a good position at all for that Vampire Fleet Admiral, but she's low on ammunition now anyway, so she will have to get engaged in melee, but she might want to pick and choose her battles a little bit more carefully than that, than just standing out in the open. But you can see as this stalling maneuver has come through from the carronade, these guys are able to respond as well, pushing in to try and get some rear charges onto the Sternsman and the Graveguard. Perhaps these gunshots continue to come through. Again, these guys have sort of been sitting still and not doing too much throughout this battle. That's why they still have so much ammunition, and the Black Coach sees the value of this unit over here, so decides to go charging right in, and these guys are not quick enough to respond. They're causing so much damage right now. They want to try and get volley after volley through, and the Black Coach is just like, no, not in my house. And in comes the Black Coach with a beautiful charge over here. Again, that is a solid charge bonus. That is a lot of anti-infantry and armor-piercing damage output as well. So this zombie pirate gunnery mob unit is not going to have a good time at all. And you can see at the same time in the back over here, the Vampire Fleet Admiral having a terrible time as well. Already brought down to about 50% health. She has a couple of shots left. Perhaps maybe she can get rid of the Sternsman before she goes. But you can see over here as well, the Graveguard has closed the gap into the gunnery mob as well. While at the back over here, Varix Reavers needing to pull back into safety as those very well-placed pole arms held them back. So nice maneuvering there by the Vampire Coast, but by the Vampire Counts as well, pulling back into safety, pushing off to the side as over here the Black Coach comes through again with a nice rear charge. The gunnery mob here now crumbling. They might just give up on the fight. And Manfred as well pulling away now, hoping to get a nice charge in because the animated hulks were bogging him down, and the Sternsmen look like they will fall as well. They are crumbling right now, and that is counteracting against their regenerative capabilities, just barely hanging in there, but with a couple of gunshots they will fall as Manfred here as well, trying to get that nice charge into the Vampire Fleet Admiral, but very wisely done there, sort of staying in the midst of all of these animated hulks to prevent a clean charge from coming through. The Sternsmen have fallen, so it's just the Black Coach, Manfred himself, and Varix Reavers tucked away in the trees, hiding, pretending they don't exist anymore, as these gunners sort of turn around and get a couple of shots in here, I think firing at the Black Coach, as once more we got some charges coming through, trying to get into the Vampire Fleet Admiral, realizing it's not an opportunity there, so looping around again, trying to find those gaps. Very nice maneuvering over here. Unfortunately, it's just not doing enough to get into the Vampire Fleet Admiral, but the Vampire Fleet Admiral has to get into melee right now because she no longer has any shots left. Manfred, you can see, using the Master of the Black Arts to try and get some more magic if available, and these Zombie Pirate Deckhand mob over here that were previously down over here engaging against the Varix Reavers have now been able to group up. So a little bit of regrouping happening over here. We don't see regrouping enough, if I'm completely honest, but just pulling back, forming up again, preparing themselves, because it is just 3 units against the Vampire Coast, and this is a time where we should not believe in the balance of power, because right now it's all a matter of one misstep. A couple of good shots into Varix Reavers, or a good charge reception by the pole arms over here could completely eliminate Varix Reavers. A little bit of patience will go a long way as well. So you can see these guys sort of, I think, grouping up, waiting for the Winds of Magic to replenish, maybe get another Invocation of Nehek or something down somewhere, and that does also give these guys time to line up, form up. Again, the Vampire Fleet Admiral is maybe a little too close to the front there, might want to pull back a little bit further, and you can see, of course, the gunnery mob needs to be very wary because there's a lot of mobility among the Vampire Counts right now. They're all either on horseback or chariots, and they're looking for an opportunity to dive in, and good mirroring there. You can see sort of swiveling around to make sure that the fronts are facing the enemy, but of course, the Vampire Counts are well aware of the dangers of charging into some of these units, so they have to outmaneuver the enemy as well. Of course, you can see there comes another Master of the Black Arts, so I think that's what's happening over here. A little bit of stalling, and the Vampire Coast not playing aggressively enough, allowing Manfred von Karstein to get some of his magical capabilities back, and that could be the make or break scenario over here. So now finally you can see the gunnery mob creeping forward, getting ready to get some shots in wherever possible, but then ultimately pulling back into safety as well. A little too nervous, maybe a little too scared, but to be fair, this is a very, very terrifying situation to be in. You can see Manfred sort of curling around this way, the pole arms here getting ready to absorb that charge, but unfortunately Manfred decides to pull back into safety. He is wise. He's not going to just dive into a bunch of pole arms. At the same time, you can see over here we have the Black Coach looking for an opportunity to dive in, as Varix Reavers sitting still over there looking for an opportunity to push through. So trying to come in from multiple angles, and you can see Manfred now sees this golden opportunity as the pole arms present their backs to him, and he sees that opportunity. He dives right through them, cleaving them in twain in some occasions, tossing them backwards, but most importantly perhaps causing morale damage. And this was a big mistake from those pole arms presenting their backs, because right away you can see Manfred turns around and pulls away. Very nice little sort of cat and mouse game being played there. Good sort of split in multiple directions, coming in again for another rear charge, because again those pole arms are facing the wrong direction, and again pulling back into safety, trying to rip these lines apart, trying to force these guys apart, trying to force openings, because you can see as The Vampire Coast was distracted by Manfred. We have this charge coming through from Varric's Reavers, but again now pulling back into safety because the pole arms have pushed forward. But now back over here, the Black Coach is able to come in from behind, and Manfred is able to come in from this side as well, as the animated Hulks have been drawn out. So in comes Manfred, hoping for a charge over here. Another Master of the Black Arts. He goes diving on through those pole arms right into the Vampire Fleet Admiral, but in come those animated Hulks. They were able to respond in time, but you can see the pole arms over here now responding as well. So the Black Coach is able to come in with a rear charge. Very nicely done there, and Manfred just trying to get out of there, as Varric's Reavers are back over here as well, pushing in once more because, again, this massive distraction. But take a look at this beautiful use of magic, dropping in those zombies at the perfect time, drawing in aggression from all of the Vampire Coast units. Those zombies are sacrificial zombies, of course, but what they've done is they've drawn the focus of all of the Vampire Coast units, allowing the Black Coach to come charging through, allowing Manfred to come charging through, allowing Varric's Reavers to charge through, pull back, and then charge through once again. A great use of a throwaway unit over there, and that's exactly what I think Manfred was waiting for that opportunity to summon these zombies. Because take a look at the amount of work being done over here, especially to morale. Basically, all of these units are crumbling or close to crumbling. Very nicely done. And again, Varric's Reavers and the Black Coach are able to pull back into safety and get some more charges through. They're trying to do exactly that. There we go. Black Coach is able to get away. Manfred as well was able to get away and is looping back for another charge. The animated Hulks, you can see, very close to crumbling as well. They're at critical binding right now. These zombies doing so much work. In comes the Black Coach once more with a rear charge onto the animated Hulks. Varric's Reavers coming through as well. They're going to cause a lot of hurt. You can see more crumbling going down over here. The zombie pirate deckhand mobs do not stand a chance. There we go. Disintegration across the board. And, well, the dead have won the day, is the Vampire Counts that had what it takes, with a Pyrrhic victory. The Vampire Coast made some crucial early mistakes that may have actually cost them the entire battle. With range superiority, and in fact range options in general, wasting shots on zombies was unfortunate because it did waste some reload time especially. So the fire at will on the carronades was kind of costly. And then focusing on the corpse cart, I don't know if that was quite the ideal option either. The Graveguard and the Sternsman were serious threats to the Vampire Coast front line, and they approached relatively unhindered. This, alongside some friendly fire from beyond the grave and under the sea, meant that the Vampire Coast front line melted very easily, and the Vampire Counts were able to cut through what was left, close gaps to ranged units, and finish things off with some sweet Black Coach charges. I really like the patience exhibited by the Vampire Counts as well, especially on that final zombie summon, and unfortunately the Vampire Coast was playing it too patiently. Had they been a bit more aggressive, they may not have been in that situation at all. As always, make sure you subscribe to this channel for more Total War content and keep sending in those battle replays at the Discord link in the description down below. I'd like to thank all of my patrons and channel members for supporting the channel on a monthly basis, and I'd like to thank all of you for watching. I'll see you on the battlefield.